Well, I was born in Pittsburgh, went to Pittsburgh Public Schools here. Came from a family of steelworkers and coal miners, and my brother and sister were the first generation college students. And I was very involved in science and in high school. And so I applied for a scholarship to Carnegie Tech in those days, Carnegie Institute of Technology. I received a scholarship and entered as an electrical engineering student. But in the summer times, I was working with an electrical engineer who did lighting and power programs for architects. His clients were architects, and I was his draftsman. And inevitably, the architects would come into the office and they'd say something like, "Hey kid, you don't want to be an engineer, you want to be an architect." And I hadn't even thought about it. So 2 years into my degree in electrical engineering, I inquired if I could transfer to architecture. So I transferred to architecture. They gave me credit for 1 year. So I had to spend 4 more years for a 5-year degree. And no turning back. It was the right decision. Without any doubt, I made the right decision. And it's been a career that anybody could love. I mean, to be an architect all your life is great. I was in the ROTC at Carnegie Tech, and I graduated in 1967 as a second lieutenant in the Corps of Engineers because I was an architect. I immediately went into service, and I had some training, and my first duty station was in California, and they noticed that I also had studied electrical engineering. Being an officer in the Army, the first thing you learned about is the value of leadership, also responsibility. But I recognized I needed people to work for me, with me, so the value of teamwork and being prepared. And an important thing I learned also that it followed me all through my career when I began to have employees who worked for me is that support your troops. After the Army, I spent a year in Scotland in graduate school in urban design, regional planning. And when I came back to the States, I worked in that field for a while. But I always wanted to work for Urban Design Associates, and they finally hired me as an architect and an urban designer. And as soon as I joined the firm, they encouraged me to join the AIA as an associate because I wasn't registered. So I did, and I went to committee meetings and got involved in all of that. And there was a group of architects at the time who were trying to energize the local chapter. It kind of got moribund and stayed. And so it was Sylvester Damianos, Luc Desmond, and Lou Astorino. And they reached out to me and said, "Look, you know, Lou, they've been all presidents in a row. We need you to come on the board, and then you can be the president." So I was part of this group of people that actually kind of re-energized the AIA, and we established a permanent office and an executive director and columns, the newspaper. All that came out of that early bunch of people. When people ask me kind of what's your favorite projects, it's like, who's your favorite child? You know, we love them all. But I often refer to Liberty Center here in Pittsburgh, which is a big project, you know, mixed use, 600-room hotel, 500,000 square foot office building, and all the things that go with it, is a very important project. In Pittsburgh, the North Shore Master Plan, but some of the ones that stick for me are the Cincinnati Riverfront Project, which was a multi-year planning process. It cited 2 sports stadiums and a lot of development and a riverfront park. You know, the problems of cities and, you know, having worked all over the place, they're kind of universal, both the assets and the problems in cities. But one thing that I did learn, because a lot of our projects we did as public engagement projects, that people love their communities. First question we ask is, what do you like about your community? What are you most proud of? Because when you go into these communities, typically they want to complain. We don't let them start out on the negative. We start on the positive. And so a lot of times it'll be that park. We love that park. People like to talk about what it used to be when the sidewalks were crowded and we had 3 movie theaters downtown or whatever. And so they start reinforcing each other. Oh yeah, you know, we like our elementary school and we like, you know, our city council person or whatever. Then we open it up and say, well, what don't you like? And that's when all the problems come out. There's too many vacant buildings, or there's rats in the garbage, or the kids can't play in the park because there's broken glass, whatever. And then the third question always is, okay, now we've heard the good things and the bad things. What would you like it to be? What's your vision in the future? And usually they kind of stare at you. They don't know how to answer that question. Nobody's asked that. So we will typically say something like, that's 5 or 10 years from now. And we, urban designers, have come back and we've accomplished some things. And you're going to take us around and show us what we've accomplished together. What would that be? And then they say, yeah, they start thinking about projects that they could be proudly show. And if that doesn't do it, we'll say, well, have you been somewhere else where the neighborhood is the neighborhood you would like to recreate here? And I'll say, yeah, I was in Nashville and they had all these music stores. You just try to get people to open up about their blue sky dream. Just a little background on the Remaking Cities Congress. That was in 2013, but that was 25 years after the Remaking Cities Conference in 1988. 2013, by that time I had retired from my firm, Urban Design Associates, and I was teaching at Carnegie Mellon, and I was directing the Remaking Cities Institute, which I'd helped form with David Lewis and Richard Florida and Ray Gindros. And we decided at the Remaking Cities Institute that we should invite all the cities who were part of the 1988 Remaking Cities Conference to come back to Pittsburgh and see what had happened in places like Pittsburgh, Detroit, Liverpool, Rotterdam, Turin, Italy, whatever it might be. And so the Remaking Cities Institute approached the AIA National. They said they would co-chair it with us. So then we got the Urban Land Institute National to join us, American Planning Association to join us. And so we had a gathering here. And we asked those questions. What have you done in 25 years after the collapse of coal in central Germany, after the collapse of steel in Pittsburgh, and the collapse of Fiat Motors in Turin, Italy? Out of the Congress in 2013, I ended up being asked to write a book featuring 10 case studies from that conference, that Congress in 2013. There were 5 cities in the US, 5 cities in Europe, and that book was published called Remaking Post-Industrial Cities, Lessons from North America and Europe. As a result of that, I started being asked to travel and give talks on that, including the 10 cities that were in the book, but other cities. And it was amazing to be out there in these cities and actually see the successes that they had. Those cities that did well had a long-term vision that everybody agreed upon. They involved the public. Clearly, since 1970 was Earth Day, first Earth Day, and in my career, I've seen this whole sustainable development probably accelerate in the next 10, 15 years. So the AIA nationally and locally are really advocates for green design, for sustainable design. We need to back that. In terms of opportunities for Pittsburgh in the next 125 years, it comes back to something we've talked about several times, is we have to build on the assets we already have. And so it's the physical environment we have, it's the cultural assets, the intellectual assets, our universities. There's no city of our size anywhere in the world that has 2 major universities, research universities, like we have, and 5 research hospitals. That is an incredible asset that nobody can touch.